That night, I was heading home. 10 years of marriage. I even stopped by the bakery. Picked up a small cake. On top, it said, "Still us, always." I thought we'd light a candle, share a slice, look back on how far we'd come. But waiting at the door was my old suitcase, soaked in the rain. Next to it, a note, scribbled in her handwriting. "Jason, I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. We're over." I froze under the porch, rain dripping down, falling on the cake in my hands. The words "Still us always" washed away. The cake meant for 10 years of marriage turned into a bitter joke. I tried my keycard. Beep, red light. Locked out. The house I worked 10 years to pay off shut me out. I knocked. I called her name. Silence. Neighbors walked by, glanced at me, and kept walking. I felt like a stranger, thrown out of the very place I belonged. I opened my wallet. $50. That's all I had. 36 years old. No wife, no home, nothing left. I thought about calling a friend. But how could I say it? She kicked me out. Shame held me back. So I sat in my car, watched the rain pound the windshield, the cake melting on the seat beside me. A reminder. This marriage had melted away too. I drove, no destination, street after street, until I saw it. A flickering neon sign. A cheap motel on the roadside. Half the letters burned out, struggling to stay lit in the rain. I pulled over, dragged my soaked suitcase inside. Wet shoes slapping against cold tile, the sharp smell of bleach in the hallway. The manager didn't care, just slid me the key. The room was small, sheets yellowed, curtains stained with mold. I dropped the suitcase, sat down on the edge of the bed. The rain kept falling, and that's when I realized all I had left was $50. A suitcase, and 7 nights in this rundown motel. If only I had known that those 7 nights would change my life forever. I might have broken down, right there on the doorstep. My name is Jason Miller, 36 years old. Before everything collapsed, if someone asked me about my life, I'd usually say, "It's fine, nothing to complain about." I had a steady job, a small house in the suburbs, a gentle wife. On the surface, the picture of an American family. But looking back, that word "fine" was just paint, covering cracks I didn't want to see. I worked IT support, fixing computers, troubleshooting software, answering customer emails. Nothing glamorous, but I liked it. There was something satisfying about solving a problem. Hearing someone say, "Thanks, Jason." The paycheck wasn't big, but it was steady. And I thought, stability is what a family needs. I met Emily when we were students. I was teaching seniors basic computer skills. She was fresh out of college, running a reading class. That day, I dropped a stack of papers. They went flying everywhere. She bent down, helped me gather them up, and smiled. "Looks like you need a better backup system." I laughed. And that's how we started. We dated 2 years. Got married in her parents' backyard. A small wedding. My friends teased me. "Jason, you hit the jackpot." And I believed it. Emily didn't chase money or ambition. She just wanted a quiet life. And me? I grew up watching my parents fight until the divorce. I wanted the opposite. A house without shouting. I swore to myself I would never turn marriage into a battlefield. But that vow turned me into someone who avoided conflict, someone who stayed silent. We started in a small rented apartment. 3 years later, we bought a house in the suburbs. I still remember holding the keys, thinking, finally, a real home. It wasn't big, but Emily planted flowers on the porch, and I built a wooden swing in the backyard. On weekends, we'd drive to Walmart, pick up groceries, grab cheap burgers at McDonald's. Simple things, but I called that happiness. The early years were full of small moments. She cooked. I did the dishes. One rainy evening, we had no umbrella. We huddled under the awning of a convenience store, soaked, but laughing. I remember her holding my hand, whispering, "As long as I have you, I can face any storm." 10 years later, same kind of night. The rain pouring down. But this time, I stood under my own porch, with nothing but a suitcase and a divorce note. That contrast still chokes me. I worked hard. Too hard. Some weeks, 60 hours. I told myself it was for her, to pay off the mortgage, so Emily wouldn't worry. But in chasing financial stability, I disappeared from the marriage. On our 8th anniversary, she prepared a candlelit dinner. I came home late, exhausted. The candles had burned out. The food was cold. She didn't yell. She just said softly, I don't need everything from you. I just need you here. I nodded. But inside I thought, just a little longer, just a little harder. That was the last time she mentioned anniversaries. From there, the distance grew. I stayed silent in conflict. She came home late, saying work kept her. She stopped asking, "How was your day?" There were messages on her phone I pretended not to see. I told myself, she's just busy. Don't doubt her. I clung to that illusion of peace. She had a small habit. Every morning, she'd leave me notes in the kitchen. Sometimes, coffee's on the table. Sometimes, chicken for dinner tonight. Then one day, the note stopped. I noticed, but I didn't ask. And that was my mistake. Friends thought we were solid. They saw us shopping together, smiling in vacation photos on Facebook. But they didn't see the quiet dinners, didn't hear the sighs in the dark. And I hid it, because speaking out meant admitting the truth. Our marriage was breaking. I thought silence was protection. But silence is just another way of leaving. Looking back, I see it now. A marriage never dies overnight. It dies slowly, in moments you don't notice. When you forget an anniversary, when you stay late at work instead of going home, when those morning notes disappear, and you don't ask why. I thought I was the luckiest man alive. But that belief blinded me. I didn't see I was losing everything. To a stranger, my life looked perfect. Steady job, a house, a kind wife. But the truth was, I let the marriage rot in silence. And on that rainy night, locked out, staring at a soaked suitcase and a melting cake, I finally understood. Fine never means happy. The cracks in our marriage were already there. But the real breaking point, the moment I couldn't hide anymore, came on a night that seemed ordinary. It was a Friday. My company had just laid people off. The office tense, heavy. I stayed late, fixing a broken email system. By the time I left, it was almost 10 p.m. Hungry, I stopped at a fast food joint, ordered a cheap burger. At the counter, I handed over my card. The cashier swiped it, looked up. "Sorry, transaction declined." I frowned. "Try again." She tried twice more. Still declined. I felt the eyes of the people behind me, staring. I had a few crumpled bills in my pocket. Not enough. I forced a smile, told her to cancel the order, and walked out. My stomach was empty, but the shame burned worse than the hunger. Driving home, I checked my phone. A notification. Account locked, by account holder request. The account holder was Emily, my wife. My chest tightened. Still, I told myself maybe it was a glitch. Maybe she changed the password. Maybe. I filled my head with maybes to avoid the truth. When I pulled into the driveway, the porch light was on. I felt relief. I thought, maybe dinner's waiting. Maybe we'll talk this through. But then I saw it. My suitcase, sitting right there on the porch. Rain dripping off the handle. A note taped on top. Her handwriting. Crooked, rushed. "Jason, I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. We're over." I ran to the door. Swiped my keycard. Beep, red light. Tried again. Same thing. Locked out. The house I believed was solid ground rejected me in an instant. I knocked. Called her name. Silence. Neighbors passed by. Their eyes lingered, then turned away. I felt like an outcast. In the very neighborhood I once called community. I grabbed the suitcase, opened my wallet. $50. That's all. I sank onto the porch steps. Rain falling, cold seeping down my spine. The anniversary cake I'd bought earlier had melted in the paper bag. The words "Still Us Always" smeared into gray streaks. Looking at it, I felt mocked. In despair, I thought of calling an old college friend. I dialed the number, but before pressing call, I stopped. I couldn't face the question. What happened? I couldn't admit my wife had thrown me out, like I was nothing. So I stayed silent. And silence became my prison. I drove aimlessly through wet streets, headlights blurred by rain. By midnight, I saw it. A flickering neon sign. A roadside motel. The word vacancy glowing weakly. Half the letters dead. I pulled in. Like a drowning man clinging to driftwood. The manager barely looked at me, eyes fixed on the TV. He asked, "How many nights?" "One," I muttered. He slid me the key. "Room 12. I dragged my suitcase up, opened the door. The stench of bleach hit me. Faded sheets, mold-stained curtains, a ceiling fan clattering overhead. Like it was mocking me. I sat on the edge of the bed, looked around, and realized all I had left in this world was $50, a suitcase, and a melting cake. That night, I didn't sleep. I listened to the rain outside, the couple in the next room arguing, the TV buzzing faintly from the front desk. I turned to the wall, eyes wide open, the cold creeping through the thin blanket. One thought repeating in my head: I've lost everything. The next morning, I walked to a corner store, bought instant noodles and a bottle of water. With what little cash I had. Back in the room, I boiled water in the old kettle, poured it into a paper cup, ate in silence. The noodles bland, but I forced each bite down, to fill the hollow inside me. Day 2. I woke early, showered in cold water, the heater broken, looked in the mirror, a gaunt face, patchy beard. I snapped a photo, sent it to myself. A reminder, this is your rock bottom. Day 3. I tried calling Emily. The phone rang, then cut off. I texted, I just want to talk. No reply. It felt like I'd been erased from her world. Day 4. I bought a cheap notebook, started writing. At first, just a few words. Tired, hungry, alone. But then more came out. Fear, anger, childhood memories I'd buried. Writing was the only thing keeping me sane. Day 5. I dialed a few old friends. No one picked up. Maybe they saw my name and thought, Jason, why is he calling now? I didn't blame them. Truth was, when life was fine, I hadn't kept in touch. And now, when I needed someone, no one was there. Day 6. I sat for hours in a cheap cafe, used their free Wi-Fi, sent out job applications. I didn't expect much. The weight of failure pressed down. But I had no choice. Day 7. I woke earlier than usual. Weak sunlight slipped through the curtains. I made a cup of instant coffee, sat by the window, stared at the muddy parking lot. I thought, I can't sit here forever. And that was the morning. An email appeared in my inbox, the one that would change everything. The email showed up on the cracked screen of my old laptop, inside that rundown motel room, like a double-edged blade. I read it over and over, dozens of times. Jason, we'd like to invite you back to your previous position. Can you attend an interview next week? Regards. It was from Mark, my old boss. And now, Emily's new husband. I froze, my fingers trembling on the keyboard. Part of me whispered, this is your chance. You need money. You need a job. But another voice screamed, what do they see you as? A failure? Crawling back? Begging. I shut the laptop, leaned back in the chair. The ceiling fan clattered above, like a countdown clock. I felt like a pawn in someone else's twisted game. That day, I checked my wallet. Less than $20. Enough for one decent meal. Or gas. Not both. I chose instant noodles and the cheapest water I could find. At the register, my backup card was declined. The cashier sighed, then spoke into the intercom. Customer can't pay. Cancel the order. Every head turned toward me. My face burned. I dug through my pockets, handed over a few crumpled bills. It felt like a slap. In public, back in the room, I poured boiling water over noodles in a paper cup. Steam rising. I stared blankly. 1 month ago, I'd been eating steak with Emily in a warm restaurant. Now, noodles in a bleach-stained motel. The contrast choked me. I wanted to cry, but the tears stuck in my throat. The next day, I went to a nearby Starbucks. Free Wi-Fi. Scrolling through Facebook, I saw her. Emily, smiling, radiant, at a party, standing next to Mark. Champagne glasses raised, lights glittering. The caption read, congratulations to the perfect couple. I sat frozen. Everyone we knew now celebrated them. No one asked about me. It was as if I never existed. In the comments, one line cut through me. Emily deserves real happiness. Real happiness. And me? 10 years? What was that? A joke? I slammed the laptop shut, pressed my face into my hands. My fingers clenched the flimsy paper cup. The heat burned my skin, but I didn't let go. I needed the sting to cover the ache inside. That night, a call came in. Unknown number. I answered. A woman's voice. Mr. Miller, I'm Emily's attorney. I held my breath. She continued. You'll receive divorce papers this week. Emily wants this resolved quickly. Please sign and return. If there are disputes, we'll take it to court. I gave a bitter laugh. She's already taken everything. What's left to dispute? Silence. Then the lawyer replied, coldly, be careful with your words. This is a legal process. The line went dead. I sat there, staring at the ceiling. Hours passing. Part of me wanted to smash the phone. Another part was hollow. Too drained to rage. I opened my notebook. Wrote, Day 9. They have each other. I have no one. Maybe my disappearance would be a relief to the world. Day 10. I hate my reflection. It reminds me I let everything slip away. Day 11. I'm tired, but I fear sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see Emily walking away with him, the ink smeared with tears. I shut the notebook, stuffed it into my suitcase, and wondered, if I vanished for real, would anyone even notice? Day 12. I was sitting in a cafe when I saw a familiar face, a former coworker. He spotted me, froze, then forced a smile. Jason, you look different. I smirked. He sat down, chatted awkwardly, then said, Did you hear? Mark and Emily got engaged last week. Everyone at the office calls it a fairy tale romance. Fairy tale romance. I swallowed hard, only nodded. No words. He added, I heard Mark wants you back at the company, but be careful, Jason. People say they just want to watch you break again. His warning hit like a blade. Fear, anger, both twisting inside me. I left the cafe, hands shaking on the wheel all the way back to the motel. The next day, another email arrived. A reminder. Interview confirmed. I knew I could ignore it, but the thought gnawed at me. If I stayed away, I'd keep drowning in this darkness. If I went, I'd have to face Emily and Mark. That night, I lay on the hard motel bed, fan rattling above, neon light flickering outside. I wrote one more line. Day 13. They want to see me kneel, but is there a way to walk in with dignity? Morning came. I shaved, put on the last clean shirt I had, looked in the mirror, whispered, At least today, I'll stand tall. The office building loomed ahead. After all these days avoiding it, I stepped inside. Old coworkers stared, whispered, That's Jason. He actually came back. In the conference room, Mark sat waiting. Emily beside him. She wore a neat office dress, hair tied back, her eyes calm, cold. The world froze. Mark smiled, offered his hand. Welcome back, Jason. Been a while. I shook it. His grip, cold as steel. Emily glanced at me once, then looked away. The interview began. Question after question. I answered. Short, direct. But every word felt like needles, driving deeper into old wounds. At the end, Mark said, We'll consider it. Either way, good luck. I walked out, my chest heavy as stone. I knew the truth. They didn't want me. They just wanted to see me squirm. That night, back at the motel, I lay motionless for hours. Shame, anger, despair, all tangled together. I wrote again. Day 14. They won. I lost. But maybe losing is the only way to find a new path. If I keep chasing them, I'll die in their shadow. I closed the notebook, exhaled. Outside, the rain fell again. And I knew these crushing days were only the beginning. A choice was waiting for me, one that would decide everything. After the interview, I went back to the motel. Didn't turn on the light. I lay on the bed, eyes fixed on the yellow-stained ceiling, the ceiling fan clattering like a funeral song. I felt empty, so empty I couldn't even feel anger anymore. The next day, I planned to check out. Just a few dollars left in my wallet. I didn't know where I'd go, but staying in that moldy room felt pointless. I packed my clothes, pulled the suitcase to the door. That's when the manager knocked. He shoved a brown envelope into my hand. Someone left this for you. I froze. Who would remember me now? I ripped it open, my heart pounding. I expected divorce papers. The final signature, delivered in a room that stank of bleach. But the handwriting, it wasn't Emily's, not a lawyer's. It was Thomas, my father-in-law, dead 3 years now. My hands trembled as I read, Jason, if you're holding this, it means the worst has happened. I always saw you as a son. If the marriage falls apart, don't believe your life ends with it. You may have been wrong to stay silent too often, but I know there's value in you. Don't let a broken marriage define who you are. In my papers, I left a small fund for you, but you'll only receive it if you prove 6 months of steady work. I don't want you living off pity. I want you to stand on your own feet. If you fall, remember, failure isn't the end. It's the beginning. Tears smeared the ink. I sat still, hands shaking. In a world where everyone turned their back, a man who was already gone still believed I could stand up. At first, I felt angry. I needed money now, not 6 months from now. I wanted to tear the letter, scream, You don't know what I've lost? But then I remembered Thomas's eyes. The way he looked at me on my wedding day. Strict, but trusting. I read the letter again, and for the first time in weeks, in that cold motel room, I saw a glimmer of light. Not rescue, but truth. I couldn't just sit here. I had to get up. That afternoon, I walked to the grocery store. As I reached for a pack of cheap noodles, I heard laughter. Familiar. I looked up. Emily. She was with Mark, hand in hand, cart full of things she and I used to buy together. They stopped at the wine aisle. Mark picked a bottle. Emily nodded, smiled. The smile that once belonged to me. I turned away, heart stabbing. Hid behind a shelf, watching them like a ghost. For a moment, I wanted to step out, to shout at Mark, to ask Emily, what did our 10 years mean? But my feet stayed nailed to the floor. I walked out quietly, clutching the noodles. On the way back, I told myself, if I keep living in this shadow, I'll never escape. That night, I opened my notebook, wrote like a madman, my hand shaking, ink smearing. Day 15, I hate my reflection. It looks like a failure. Day 16, I cried. I never wanted to admit it, but tonight, I cried like a child. Day 17, Emily is gone. She's happy. I'm no longer in that picture. I have two choices: drown in the past, or learn to swim out. I shut the notebook, breathing hard, but strangely, lighter. Late that night, the phone rang. The screen lit up. Mark. I hesitated, then answered. His voice, mocking. Jason, we decided, you're not a fit. But hey, at least you showed up. Emily said you looked pathetic. My grip tightened on the phone, blood rushing hot. But instead of exploding, I inhaled, spoke slowly. Thanks. You showed me I don't belong there anymore. But I'll never bow my head again. I hung up before he could respond. My hand still shook. But inside, for the first time, I felt in control. I unfolded Thomas's letter, placed it on the table, whispered, I promise, 6 months, I'll stand tall again. Not to prove it to Emily, not to Mark, but to myself. And to you. Outside the window, rain drizzled. I remembered another night of rain. 10 years ago, Emily and I, laughing under a store awning. Like kids. Now, I was alone, but not completely empty. I saw a road ahead. Faint, but real. After Thomas's letter, I had a thread to hold on to. Thin, fragile, but enough to keep me from letting go. I left the motel after nearly 2 weeks. Rented a small room near downtown, walls stained. But at least, no smell of mold. I started part-time at a computer repair shop. Odd jobs. Low pay. But it mattered. Each time I handed back a fixed laptop and heard, thanks, Jason, I felt like I still existed. At night, I kept writing. The words slowly changed. Day 21, I have nothing. But today, a stranger smiled when I fixed their laptop. For the first time in weeks, I felt useful. One weekend evening, after work, I stopped at the supermarket, stacking instant noodles at the checkout. I heard a soft voice. Jason? I turned. Emily. She wore the blue coat I once bought her. Her basket. A bottle of red wine. Cabernet Sauvignon. The same we drank on our 5th anniversary. My throat tightened. My hand shook so badly I dropped the noodles. As I picked them up, she stepped closer. How have you been? Her voice small, but clear. I gave a bitter smile. Not cruel, just hollow. I'm still alive. Her lips pressed together, eyes glistening, then lowered. I'm sorry, Jason. I know the way I left was cruel, but I couldn't breathe anymore. I thought Mark could give me what I needed. I clenched the handle of my basket. 1,000 words rose inside me. What about our 10 years? What about the nights we laughed under the rain? But I swallowed them. Breathed deep. Met her eyes. I don't blame you anymore. You chose your path. I just hope you're happy. She blinked. Almost spoke. Then stayed silent. I walked away first. And for the first time, my heart didn't scream to keep her. That night, in my small room, I wrote. Day 27, I saw Emily. She carried our anniversary wine. My chest cut open like a blade. Day 28, she said sorry. What I wanted to answer was, I still love you. But I know now that love is a scar. Day 29, forgiveness isn't forgetting. Forgiveness is refusing to let pain run your life. Ink smudged under my shaking hand. I closed the notebook, leaning back against the wall. For the first time, I felt myself begin to let go. Weeks later, on my way to work, My phone buzzed. Mark's number. I stopped the car, stared at the screen. His mocking voice echoed in my mind. My thumb hovered over the button, then pulled back. I let it ring and fade. This time, no guilt, just freedom. That night, I wrote, Day 41, I didn't pick up, and it felt like breaking free from invisible chains. Day by day, I kept working, kept writing, kept learning new skills. One satisfied customer referred me to a friend's startup. They needed a full-time IT guy. An email arrived. Interview invitation. Not a high position, not big money. But I laughed. Not the bitter laugh I once knew. A lighter one, because I was moving forward. That night, after closing my journal, I sat by the window. Outside, the sky was breaking open, sunlight spilling gold over old rooftops. I whispered to myself, the night doesn't last forever, but I have to be the one to walk out of it. And in that moment, I understood. The aftermath of a broken marriage isn't just loss. It's a push, forcing me to face myself, the man who'd avoided for too long. And this time, I chose not to avoid anymore. 6 months later, I was no longer the man, sitting blank in a damp motel room. I had a full-time job at a small startup, still living in a modest room, still with little to spare. But each morning, when I woke up, I knew I wasn't living like a shadow anymore. One day, passing through the supermarket, I stopped at the wine aisle. On the shelf sat a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, the same kind Emily and I drank on our 5th anniversary, 6 months ago. Just seeing it would have torn my chest open. Now I smiled. No trembling hands, no urge to run. It was just a bottle of wine. The memory remained, but it no longer chained me. Another night, I walked past the old house. Warm lights glowing, Emily and Mark's silhouettes moving inside. From a distance, my hand curled tight, knuckles white. I stood there a while, then took a deep breath. My heart still ached, but it didn't twist anymore. I unclenched my fist, turned away, kept walking, and in that moment I understood. I never had to stand at that door again. That night, I opened my notebook. The final page. Day 180. I've held my job. I've stayed standing. The money Thomas left. That's just a reward. The real lesson is this. I don't avoid anymore. I know I can fall, but I also know I can get back up. I closed the notebook, looked at the old suitcase in the corner. 6 months ago, it was the end. Soaked, abandoned on a porch. Now, it was just a suitcase, ready to follow me into whatever journey I chose next. I pulled back the curtain. Dawn was rising, golden light spilling across old rooftops, and I whispered, I once thought losing her was the end, but it was only a semicolon to start another chapter. Then I stepped outside, carrying my scars, carrying my gratitude, carrying the quiet faith that the night never lasts forever.